Welcome to Next Level Weekend Podcast, where we decode the business, design, and strategy behind successful mobile games. Today, we are talking about the mobile game retention crisis, why good games still lose players after day 30, and how to create a strong reason for players to return tomorrow. So, let's press the start button. Mobile gaming studios are currently acquiring players at higher costs than ever before. But no matter how much budget pours into user acquisition, those expensively acquired cohorts often walk right out the revolving door. Even a game with polished visuals, satisfying mechanics, and strong day-one metrics will routinely lose over 90% of its new users within the first month. Look at this cohort retention curve. Day 1 lands at 35%. Day 7 drops to 15%. Day 30 flatlines near 5%. Overlay rising cost per install and longer payback periods, and you hit a financial breaking point. Studios naturally panic when they see this metric collapse. The immediate response is to accelerate the production treadmill, push out more levels, release more skins, and launch more simultaneous events. This assumes players leave because they run out of things to do. But enjoying a game and forming a habit are two different things. A fun mechanic answers the question of whether a player is enjoying today's session. It does not answer why they should return for another one tomorrow. Day 30 churn is typically a symptom of a missing incentive to return, rather than a lack of playable material. Adding more playable material on top of a weak retention structure does not generate psychological commitment. It only creates UI clutter without giving the player a tangible purpose. To fix this, we have to trace the retention timeline back to its origin, the first-time user experience on day 1. Most mobile game tutorials are highly effective at teaching the controls. They show the player exactly where to tap, how to upgrade a building, or how to complete a task. What they fail to communicate is the ultimate fantasy. A player can finish their first session perfectly understanding the mechanics, yet feel zero emotional drive to open the app the next day, because they have no idea what they are actually building toward. Compare these two approaches. On the left, a standard tutorial UI forces attention on a mechanical action, upgrading a minor asset. On the right, the game immediately reveals a locked high-level prestige character or a massive late-game base. Surfacing this long-term dream immediately creates a highly desirable mid-term target. The player needs to see the eventual transformation before they close the app. Day 1 only succeeds when a player ends their session anticipating the features they will unlock next week, rather than just remembering the buttons they pushed today. If the player returns, the next major drop-off point waits at day 7. This gauge represents first-week motivation, fueled by curiosity, fast unlocks, and starter bonuses. But as day 7 hits, novelty expires, draining motivation to 0. To survive, the game must replace it with a structured fuel source, goal hierarchies, and habit harnessing. This requires a specific design framework known as the 4-layer return architecture. The first layer focuses on daily returns. These are fast, achievable routines, like daily missions or a free shop refresh that a player can complete in a short, non-punitive session. The second layer is the weekly return. This acts as the critical bridge across the day 7 chasm, relying on mechanics like weekend tournaments or clan targets to create anticipation that spans multiple days. Layers 3 and 4 cover the monthly and tentpole returns. Season passes, major collection albums, and sweeping feature updates give the player an identity and a reason for long-term aspiration. Without a visible 3 to 7 day medium-term goal connecting the daily tasks to the monthly aspirations, the game ceases to feel like a continuous journey. It degrades into a list of disconnected chores. As the player advances into the day 14 to day 30 stretch, late-stage retention is typically killed by two specific design flaws: numerical progression and disconnected live ops. Numerical progression creates a mathematical illusion of advancement. A player spends increasing amounts of currency merely to make an income metric or damage output 5% larger, while the actual game experience remains static. Meaningful progression requires tangible change. Upgrading must introduce new automation, open entirely new strategic choices, or physically alter the visual identity of the player's space. This issue compounds when studios implement live ops events that act as isolated, reskinned grinding systems, pulling attention away from the core game without advancing it. Look at this flow system schematic. The side loop, representing a temporary live ops event, generates resources that physically flow back into the central pillar of core meta progression. Strong events provide tangible progress toward permanent goals, adding a strategic twist that accelerates lasting achievement. If an event's rewards do not directly upgrade the core progression loop, players will engage only for the immediate payout. The studio will see a temporary revenue spike, followed immediately by cohort churn. Translating this retention chain into a practical engineering workflow requires analyzing cohort curves for specific structural breaks. Here, we have a dashboard displaying 3 distinct retention failure patterns. Curve A shows a steep day 1 drop, pointing to weak marketing alignment, technical crashes, or a failure to establish a long-term purpose during the first user experience. Curve B shows a strong day 1, but a steep drop at day 7. This indicates that initial novelty expired, the player hit an extreme economy bottleneck, or the game lacks visible medium-term weekly goals. Curve C shows healthy day 7 numbers, followed by a slow bleed toward day 30. This reveals a game with disconnected live ops, repetitive numerical progression, and a distinct lack of social attachment. However, these metrics must always be segmented by device performance. Often, a studio will tear apart their economy design trying to fix a late-stage churn problem, only to realize they are looking at technical crashes, affecting users on low-end hardware. These cohort curves function as diagnostic scans, pinpointing the specific moment a player's psychological commitment fails. When we reach day 30, the final and most durable structural node required to keep a player indefinitely comes into focus. Looking at the full retention chain from day 1 to day 30, the architecture terminates in this final node, social and identity attachment. Effective social retention does not come from generic global leaderboards or empty chat rooms tacked on to a solo experience. This photograph of players gathered densely illustrates what true social gravity looks like in practice. Deep retention takes hold when a player realizes their absence matters to someone else. That responsibility is forged through shared milestones and cooperative events. Endless push notifications, artificial energy timers, and UI tricks demanding immediate attention cannot manufacture this kind of loyalty. A studio must shift its entire perspective away from optimizing the length of a single daily session. Games do not die because they suddenly become bad. They die because players stop seeing a meaningful future inside them. Stop asking how to make players play longer today, and build the architecture that makes them care about returning tomorrow. You are listening to Next Level Weekend Podcast. Remember, retention is not just about making players play longer today. It is about making them care enough to come back tomorrow. Keep building games players don't want to leave behind.